The Illinois Association of Park Districts is involved in a very exciting project called the Illinois Park and Conservation Legends video series, which gives us an opportunity to talk with leaders in the field of parks and recreation in the state of Illinois that have made a tremendous difference in their community and for the entire state. Today, it's my honor to be here today with Sebastian "Buzz" Puccio. He has served in public service for more than 42 years, having started out on the Plan Commission of the Bloomingdale community when he was age 24. And Buzz, it's great to be here with you today. I understand that you're currently the Park Board President, but you first began your service in 1993 as a Park District Commissioner, and through 2001, and then picked it up again, and you've been serving as a Park Commissioner for more than 18 years.
Correct. First of all, thank you for including me.
Absolutely.
It's a distinct honor and privilege to do this. Years ago, I was asked to join the Parks Board when they had a lack of experienced people on there. Didn't think I'd like it, but I stuck around for a number of years.
Well, that's wonderful. So how would you describe yourself? 42 years of public service is something that's special. So I'm just curious, how would you describe yourself as an individual?
I'd like to think I've always been reasonable, been able to work with both sides of an argument and come to a consensus. And I enjoy helping people and assisting. If there's a problem, I'll jump right in. And that's, I think, why I have remained as long as I have on this board.
That's great. And what motivated you? Really, at the very first time you became a park commissioner, what motivated you to do it?
My wife. I had retired from the village board, and when this opening came on the park board, several of the new commissioners came to see me and said, we need somebody with some governmental experience to help us out here. And I wasn't going to do it. I thought, well, my time is done. I was coaching and managing my one son's hockey team, helping out with the other son with baseball. And my wife said, go do something adult. So that's what I did.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
And why are you still involved today?
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's very gratifying to see people, especially with what we do. People are happy usually when they're doing something at the Park District. Sure. And if we can make them smile, we've done our job.
Well, that's a great philosophy. And so what would be the philosophy of a good commissioner? You know, you serve without compensation. You've done that for more than 18 years. I can't even imagine how many meetings that is involved and time away from home.
Right.
It is an adult activity, so you know it's great that you've been involved. But what do you think the philosophy of a good park commissioner is?
Listen, then react. Consult the best people you have available and find a reasonable answer that's affordable to the problem and put it in play. People usually react in a positive way even when they don't get all they want. If there's a part of it that you can pick from that request that you can put into play, I think you'll have a very happy constituency.
Now, in your 18 years, you've seen new commissioners come and go, and I would be interested in what you would give as advice to a brand new park commissioner, how to get up and running on the issues of the day with the district, and how to really fast track to become involved effectively.
Right. Usually, a commissioner is elected because he's been involved in one or two park district activities. We have a very limited field of candidates that we attract. what I like to do is expose them to a broader spectrum than the one or two things that they've done. We hold a new commissioner seminar where two of our longstanding commissioners meet with the new commissioner and go over what's expected of them on the board, what do they expect from being on the board, and then we gradually bring them in. I try to tell them, listen at the meetings first. I'm sure you're filled with good ideas, but they may have been already enacted. So just kind of take a back seat a little bit and listen to what's being said, and then chime in. And it usually works.
That's great. That onboarding process where you bring a new person in and have them talk with a couple of experienced commissioners and also ask them what their expectations are, I think is a wonderful example for park districts across the state to follow. I know a number of them do, but it's really something that I think you can't assume that a person has full knowledge when they come on a board, and they have to really learn the culture of the board and your community as well.
What I assume is that they have no knowledge of it. And so we try to bring them along gradually. And if in fact they do have knowledge, that's even better. We also encourage them to use the IAPD's new commissioner seminars that you hold at the elections. So it's an ongoing process. It's something that every election cycle I learn something new, which I think keeps me energized and going forward in this.
Well, the interesting thing I think about park districts is if you're somebody that wants to come on because you want to improve the baseball program or some other kind of aspect of the park district, when you realize all the things that a park district does, it's really overwhelming.
The agendas get broadened.
One of the things that comes up sometimes in conversation is whether or not a park and recreation system can be better run by a municipality rather than a park district. And I know that you've been involved in both sides of the governmental entities. What do you think about that?
Absolutely not. I've been on both sides of the fence. They're two distinct and different focuses. A municipal government has responsibilities that people expect for public safety, for public needs, utilities. I like to break it down simply that when people turn on a faucet, they want clean water to come out. When they flush something, they want it to go away. That's what people expect from a municipality, and that's where their energies and their focus is directed. We don't. We're a happy business, I like to think. We like to concentrate on making people happy, making people healthy, and giving them something to focus on that they perhaps normally wouldn't if they didn't have our programs. We're a volunteer-run board that people get involved because they have an interest. They have a genuine interest in what they're doing. So I think they're a little more focused on that instead of the public works plant or paving a street. Those are important things too. So let the people, we also employ highly educated and trained professional people to carry out the programs and the policies that the boards make. Let them do what they do because they're good at it, real good at it.
Right. Well, that's true. The professionals in the state of Illinois are simply amazing. And one of the things about park districts as well is it really adds to the quality of life. So I really find that park board commissioners that have been involved for a long time really understand the correlation between a vibrant park system and great recreation programs and just the overall quality of life in a community. So you're filling so many needs of a community beyond school programs are critically important as well.
Don't forget property values. Something I learned early on at a national conference, and I don't know who made the statement, but it was 30% of the value of a property is attributed to its proximity to open space and recreation. So I think that's all part of the package when people move to a community. I think number one, it's schools. Number two, availability of religious worship places. And the third one is recreation, open space, a quality of life.
Sure.
That's what we do.
Well, and that proximity principle that you mentioned has been highly researched, and it's definitely a demonstrable benefit of having a great park system, no question about it. Buzz, you'd also mentioned professionals in parks and recreation, and I know that you've worked with some just amazing leaders on your time on the park board. Steve Schulten, of course, was the director of the Bloomingdale Park District, and now you have Carrie Fullerton. Both of those individuals are just really at the pinnacle of leadership in parks and recreation. And so what attributes, because you've been able to see people that are tremendous leaders, what attributes would you think are important in a parks director? And I think it's helpful for younger people who are in the park and recreation professional to think about those things.
I think the two things that make those two individuals, or the one thing that makes the two individuals you mentioned stand out, is they're people oriented. They take great pride in what they do, and they enjoy what they do. And if it doesn't work, they take it personally. And they're going to do something to correct whatever isn't working. You mentioned Steve Schulten. He was the executive director of the district when I came on board. He had come to us in following a period where we hadn't done much as a district, and the reputation of the district in the community was not very good. It was almost an adversarial relationship. He turned the place around. He established working relationships with other governmental bodies. He started making friends, and when he left, we made sure that we got somebody who would continue that, and boy, has she ever. People like that I think they're drawn to this field because of the interpersonal relationships that they have with our users. Steve was the same. Carrie, to this day, there's a program going on in the building. She gets out of her office, she goes down, she peeks in, she sometimes joins the program. If it's an exercise program, she gets it from the user level. I think what impressed me the most about her, and it's been a lot of the directors that I've met in the years that I've been involved in this, when we interviewed her for the position, she came in with this huge stack of materials. She had come in and done a secret shopper on us and prepared a 5-year plan. She hit the ground running. And I think that's pervasive in the industry. I hope it is anyway.
I think it is. I think you're right.
I see it in the when I attend the conference every January, that people are rushing to sessions. Nobody's just milling around having a good time. They're actually attending the sessions, and they're learning something that will help them in their day-to-day lives.
Sure. Well, that conference in January, no one wants to go outside, so you better go to an educational. There's no other option for you.
Exactly.
That's great.
Right.
The field in Parks and Recreation is just evolved, and I know you've seen that over the years. It really has been amazing to see that happen. And so as you go along throughout your term of service as a commissioner, you see various problems come up that are addressed. What do you think some of the problems are today that are confronting Parks and Recreation?
Funding. funding. You are very aware of what's going on, as everybody is, in the state of Illinois today. A lot of our funding used to come from the property tax revenue. Years ago, we saw that wasn't happening anymore. So we started making our programs self-sustaining. And we're very careful that every season, as we turn over programs, we review them as to which ones are paying for themselves and which ones aren't. There are some essentials like before and after school care that will never go away for lack of funding. But there are some that need to, they're not being used, so we get rid of them. Grants that we used to get from the state are being held up right now. I don't know how soon they'll come back. I don't think it's real close to happening. So we have to look to see where else we can get money to pay for what our customers want. One of those things is corporate sponsorships. We've gone after those in a big way, and we continue to. And corporations like to think they are active, good members of their community, and we give them that opportunity. So that, I think, will in time work itself out. I think that as the state of Illinois gets healthier again, they will, I don't think they have to realize that recreation and parks and open space is necessary. I think they already know that. I think they just have to reprioritize.
I think that's a great point. It's interesting that park districts have, particularly the park districts within the tax cap, Collier counties and Cook County, that have lived with the tax cap since 1991 or 1994, really have become much more entrepreneurial and have really done, as you had mentioned, a great job in reviewing what works and what doesn't, and let's stick with what works, and the things that don't work, we're not gonna fund anymore. And at the same time, really being able to provide service to underserved parts of the community is really a really unique thing, I think, that park districts have today as a challenge.
We hand out a great number of, quote, scholarships, unquote, for people that wouldn't otherwise be able to put their kids in our programs. We are a strong middle-class community, but to say that there are no pockets of less fortunate people would be blind. So we know that they're there. We set aside a certain amount every year. Our foundation helps in that respect, and we make sure that everybody's taken care of.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, identified those hours from 3 to 7 o'clock as the hours where young people most get in trouble, whether it's through teen pregnancy or drinking and drugs and things of those natures. So really, park districts are filling that time slot in a young person's life with just a plethora of wonderful programming activities. And when you couple that with the opportunity for scholarships to some of those programs, you're really a strong element of the community's quality of life, I think.
We also have to make sure that we're getting this message across to our residents. I'm 66 years old, and when I was 12 or 13 years old, we had pickup baseball games, we had street hockey games, we skated on the Des Plaines River in Maywood, Melrose Park area, but there were a lot of organized activities. There were, but we didn't know about them. So I think we have to be very diligent in letting the community know what's available to them. And we've done that through social media, and much less of it now, I think, is being done through these mailers and our brochures. I think a lot more of it is being done through social media.
Yeah, which is really effective, particularly for young people.
Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. So talking about young people, what advice would you give a 20-year-old?
I would say the same advice I got when I got involved in this was listen. But if you want to get involved in this, listen to what's going on, and then make a decision. Volunteer for something. You may not even know you like it, but you may develop a passion for it.
Sure.
And unless you do it, you'll never know. So, and now's the time to do it when you're 20 years old. You don't have a lot of responsibilities. You may think you do, okay, but those are yet to come. My nephew he's 25 years old, and he came to me a few weeks ago. He was offered a position in San Diego building a business. And he said, "What should I do?" I said, "What's the downside?" He says, "Well, they're going to put me in for 15% of the company." I says, "If it goes broke, you'll have 15% of nothing. Right now you have 100% of nothing. So take the chance. You're young. You have no kids. You have no love interest at this time. Go and have a good time." That's what I would tell somebody.
Well, that's great advice, particularly if it's a job in San Diego.
Yeah, exactly. I said that too.
That's great.
Yeah.
What do you think the benefits are for commissioners being involved in the Illinois Association of Park Districts?
There's a myriad. And I think that the number one is education. Most commissioners come to this position knowing that the park district has parks.
Right.
That's it. Parks have grass. Okay. Oh, there's a swing set too. Okay. You don't know a lot about it. Most people don't. There's the exception where we may have a commissioner who is also employed in the parks field in some other community. But for the most part, people don't know what a park district does when they get there. I look forward to the Illinois Conference every year. As a matter of fact, I go to that now almost exclusively over the national because the opportunities for commissioners to learn something are there. And I've said it for the last 4 or 5 years that the sessions at the state level are so much more interesting and focused to the commissioners than they are at the national level. And I would urge other commissioners to take advantage of that. The other is there's a social aspect too. I mean, I don't miss the legislative golf outing every year. I see guys from other and girls from other communities and other districts that I haven't seen in a while, and the networking pays off. And you provide that. Also, the lobbying efforts on behalf of the districts. A lot of legislation that's passed because of the lobbying efforts makes our job a little easier.
Sure. You know, you mentioned the networking aspect. What's interesting to me is that when you're a new commissioner, you don't realize it, but if you take advantage of the networking, you make lifelong friends from people from throughout the state of Illinois, not just in your own local community. So it really is a big benefit. And I think you'd reference this as well, that one of the things that's interesting about park districts that's different, I think, than the private sector is the freedom to share information. Do you have a policy on this? Yes, I do. Let me send that to you. What's your pay scale for this kind of a job description? And people share information constantly. So the network among park recreation agencies is just tremendous.
I look forward every year in January to seeing at the conference an executive director from one of our suburban districts who coached my 38-year-old son in t-ball. Okay. All right. So you talk about lifelong relationships.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet. So 42 years in public service. You started out at age 24 on the Plan Commission in Bloomingdale, and Bloomingdale was a very young community then and has just evolved into a wonderful place to live.
About 6,000 people at the time.
6,000 people is just amazing. Yeah. And so that's a tremendous accomplishment. As a young person, we were talking about what advice would you give to a 20-year-old?
Yeah.
Well, as a 24-year-old, you took your own advice, that's for sure. What do you think your major contribution is to Parks and Recreation in the community?
I'd like to think it's been the professional leadership I've brought to the board. Having had experience in running meetings, when I chaired the Plan Commission, this was a growth spurt for Bloomingdale. We went from 6,000 to 26,000. Stratford Square was built. Most of the commercial development was built in the community. And there were a number of things that people protested. So Plan Commission meetings would start at 8 o'clock, and sometimes I'd get home at 2 in the morning.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's not like a park meeting. But we, several of those meetings where we had to have police in the building. So I learned how to conduct a meeting and run it along in a professional manner so that it flowed smoothly and didn't offend a lot of the people who were there to complain and or compliment us on something. I'd like to think I brought that to this board. Over the years I've been involved, we've had some major projects that have happened. We built a couple of that I'm most proud of is our Old Town Park and Museum, where with my ties on the village board, I was able to put an intergovernmental agreement together with the mayor and the village board on a piece of property they owned in the center of town where we constructed Old Town Park with a gazebo, and now it has a police and fire memorial. We redid our museum, which was our park headquarters, when I got involved, when I moved to the town, which was a Methodist church, became the one-room schoolhouse, and the only building I ever saw that had a gas toilet that incinerated whatever was deposited in there.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
I had never either, but when the director at the time gave me the keys to the place and said, use it for your meeting, he says, just be careful. He says, when you get up. I said, okay. And, it's long since gone, and I'm disappointed that when we remodeled it, it wasn't saved. But it's a beautiful building. Residents rent it for private parties. The other thing that I'm really proud of, and that's our 100% accessible park that we built at the east end of town in Sunnyside Park. It was, to my knowledge, one of the first in the state. We've won several awards with it. Been featured on the cover of the catalog of the company that built the equipment and helped design the park, and is packed, just packed. We've had to install porta potties there because the commercial buildings around it were complaining because too many people come there and they want to use the bathrooms. Had to add parking spaces because the number of people that come from towns around.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
And it's not just for kids. The designer of the park told me of a story that when she did one of these parks the first time, the swings, she had a woman bring her husband who was an Alzheimer sufferer, and she would put him in this swing and just swing him, and he would be happy to stay there for hours at a time. And we've seen that happen at our park, and it's gratifying. Very, very gratifying.
That is fantastic.
Yeah,
I think there's probably nothing more gratifying to a park commissioner than seeing a ton of people using the park.
Absolutely.
That's what you build it for.
Absolutely, yes.
That is fabulous. So in your years of service, what's the best advice anybody ever gave you?
The one I give to them.
Okay.
I was, as I told you, I was 24 when I was appointed to the Plan Commission. I had just moved to the town, and we were in an area that was just being built, and the phone lines, back in the day when we had landlines, were torn up on a weekly basis by bulldozers and earth-moving equipment. So the neighbors had nothing much to do but go out and talk, and one night a neighbor came and knocked on my door and said, hey, we're forming a political party, and you're the campaign chairman. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So we met after we won the election. He says that one of the trustees who was elected said, I want to put you on one of the commissions. And I said, okay. I says, I'd like police and fire. I says, I'd get a badge, and if I get stopped speeding, I'd be able to show it. And he said, no, the mayor wouldn't do that. So he gave me plan commission. So I talked to one of the older trustees, and he said to me, he said, look, I says, what do I know about planning? I said, I don't know anything about planning. He said, go in. He says, get sworn in, sit down, and keep your mouth shut. He said, just listen. He said, and eventually, some very intelligent questions will form. He says, the ones that come early, forget about them. He says, because they're not going to be too intelligent. They're going to be pretty obvious. And it was a great piece of advice.
That is good
and that's
advice.
what I've used.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is great. What do you see as the future of Parks and Recreation?
Clouded. Just because of the funding issues. And some misguided consolidation efforts. I don't like the fact that the hearings that are being conducted right now about consolidation, park districts do not have a seat at the table, an official seat at the table. As I said earlier in this conversation, I don't know why you would get rid of a group of volunteers who are pretty good at what they do.
Right.
To meld this unit of government into something where it doesn't belong. I think that through the lobbying efforts of IAPD and your attention to detail, and I know Jason's attendance at these consolidation hearings, we have an indirect seat at the table. We may be in the back row, but I think we're moving up. And I think that those clouds will lift eventually, but right now I think that we as districts throughout the state have to speak up, let them know we're here and what we do. And that as a rule, people are pretty happy with what we do.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And, one of the interesting things in that conversation is, well, sometimes units of local government boards aren't accessible. How would you evaluate the accessibility of your park board to the community?
Well, whenever I run for office, I put a brochure out with my qualifications and my handsome picture and my smiling children and all that. But I also have something else on there, and that's my phone number, my home phone number. Been the same since the day I moved into Bloomingdale. And people are always free to call me. People are always free to come to our meetings. We, of course, as every public body does, have an open portion of the meeting where people can address us, ask questions. We like to say we limit it to 3 minutes per comment, but we don't. We're very open. Our minutes now are put on the website. Everything, agendas are published all over. So come and talk to us. If you have a particular problem, come and talk to us. Last year we had several tennis courts in a residential area of the town. There was nothing else around, and we have a little play area next to them. They constantly flood, they were heaving, they weren't put in right 30 years ago, whatever it was. And we were going to take them out and put in a passive amenity for the neighborhood. Oh, the roar came out. Okay, we heard. There are now brand new tennis courts there that are built to the right specs and are going to last for a number of years. We've got the same. So this year, when 2 other tennis courts, because tennis is not a big draw anymore.
Right. It used to be huge, and,
Yeah.
and as recreation trends change, it kind of
Absolutely.
tapers off. Yeah.
Right. So before we even got started on this one, we sent postcards out to all the neighbors who we thought would be impacted by this, and we got a great response. Great response. 2 weeks ago at our regular board meeting, we had a group come there and want to know what's going on with our tennis courts. And while we haven't made a final decision, I was able to tell them the greater portion of these surveys that are coming back saying, you still want the tennis courts. That's what we're going to do. I said, I can't tell you definitely we're going to do that, but I think that our meeting on September 21st, we're going to tell you definitely we're going to do that.
That's
So
good.
you have to be responsive, you have to be open, and people have to know where you are.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and they see you at a lot of public events too that the Park District has.
I make it a point to go to almost every one.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is really wonderful. We talked a little bit about funding. If funds were unlimited, what would you like to see happen for the Park District?
Take our needs assessment survey and take the top 10 things on there and say, here you go, people, we're doing them all. And just see the smiles. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we have to pick and choose those that we can do responsibly and let people know we've done them. And as I said, I think the thing that's most gratifying is seeing somebody at a new facility, that all accessible park. I think that the best thing I saw was Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth, okay, as I'm giving the opening remarks and getting ready to cut the ribbon, she's bouncing her wheelchair into my calves and whispering, come on, I want to go down the slide. And as soon as we cut the ribbon, and I called the kids up and let them cut the ribbon. So as soon as they charged in, she went right to the tallest slide, took her legs off, got up the slide, and went down.
Wow.
I can picture that today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the smile on her face.
That
was,
is great.
yeah.
That is fantastic. Well, kind of the final question I have for you, and I know you've referenced this a little bit already, and I know from your reputation that you really believe in good governance at the board level, and that you really have some remarkable leadership skills that you've brought to the park board. So really the final question for you is really, how would you like to be remembered as a park commissioner? I don't want you to go anywhere. You've got a number of years that you need to serve because the community is benefiting from your involvement and your expertise, but how would you like to ultimately be remembered as a park commissioner?
As a person who listened to the community, buried his ego, and responded in kind, gave them what they wanted, when they wanted it. Our job is to be servants of the public. As you pointed out earlier, we get no monetary remuneration for what we do.
Right.
Our payment is in seeing that gymnast make the first tumble and bounce up. My 7-year-old granddaughter came charging into the house last night with a gold medal around her neck from her hip-hop dance class, okay?
Yeah.
that she takes in another community,
Sure.
but she came in,
That's
and
great.
Papa, look what I've got. That's what makes it worthwhile.
You're making an impact each
At
and every
making
day.
an impact, absolutely, and you know the intergovernment agreements that I've fostered, and I hope that I've instilled that culture in our staff, that we're all working for the same bosses.
Sure.
Let's take that dollar and let's spread it around and let's make it go further.
That's fantastic.
That's
Well,
it.
hey, it is my honor to be able to talk to you today about your experience and your contributions to the community of Bloomingdale and the Park District. It's a special thing being a park commissioner. I see it time and time again when people are just serving out of a need almost and a desire to make their community a much better place to live. And you've certainly done that with your 18 years of Park District Commissioner experience and as President of the Board and all the myriad of other things you've done for your community. So Buzz, thank you very much for coming in today and sharing your experience. I
Been a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Peter.